Hello, and welcome to the York Centre All Candidates Debate on Climate Change. I'm your moderator for the hour. My name is Angela Bischoff, and I'm Campaigns Director for the Ontario Clean Air Alliance. We're a nonpartisan organization working to transition Ontario to a 100% renewable future. We see a need for bold leadership on climate and want every party to do more to address this challenge. I'm honored to be here in Toronto on the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We are in a climate emergency, from raging fires to droughts to melting glaciers and collapsing ice shelves. It's clear we are well into the danger zone. Yet Canada has missed every single emissions reduction target it has ever set. Canada can and must do so much more to reduce our climate impact. And that's why we're here today. There will be a federal by-election in York Centre on October 28th. We invited the candidates of the four major parties to share with us their ideas and platforms around climate change. I thank the NDP and Green Party candidates for accepting our invitation. The Liberal and Conservative candidates unfortunately declined to participate. And a big welcome to our viewers, for which the climate emergency is a critical issue. As your moderator, I'm tasked with ensuring that the rules of the debate are respected. The initial speaker order was randomly selected. Thereafter, we'll rotate speakers. There will be an opening round where each candidate will get 90 seconds to introduce themselves. Following that will be a series of questions where each candidate will get 90 seconds to respond. To ensure that the candidates stick to their time, I'll ring a bell indicating 15 seconds to go, and I'll follow with a verbal time's up. Each candidate will also get 60 seconds to rebut each other after each question. Just raise your hand if you wish to rebut or interrupt me if I miss you. For the viewers, we've disabled the chat box because we're all here to hear from the candidates themselves. But we've opened the Q&A section where you can type in any questions you have. Also, you can comment on the live stream at Ontario Clean Air Alliance's Facebook page. At the end, we'll get to some of your questions. That's it for the rules. Let's hear from the candidates themselves on why they think they're the right person to represent York Centre. First up for opening statements is Sasha Zavarella, Green Party of Canada candidate.
Hey folks, first I'd like to acknowledge my presence as well on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. I'm joining you from Toronto, which has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, as well as the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. I acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit's First Nation. This territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. Now, as for me personally, folks, I'm Sasha, and I am your candidate for the York Centre riding. I sit before you as a person who once upon a time sat on the exact same spot that you folks were, watching the candidate for this riding, talking about what they can do for us. The reality is, I have no special interests. I run no NPOs. I have no big money backers. I went to school for policing. I went to university for alternative dispute resolution. I'm here as a direct result of the experiences that I've lived and the answers that can be found in the Green Party platform. Everything that is here is a direct response to my lived experience in terms of raising the minimum wage, guaranteed living income, free post-secondary tuition, and transitioning workers who are being phased out by technology and phased out during the,
So this is the 15-second thing.
Fair enough.
If you just can wrap up.
Sure, so yeah, I'm here to be for everybody. I am the average person. I am the person that once upon a time looked around and said, hey, you know what? The government talks a lot about what they can do for the people, but I'm not seeing a direct result of this. And I'm here to directly change that for the folks at York Centre.
Thank you. And now let's hear from Andrea Vásquez Jiménez, candidate for the New Democratic Party of Canada.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Vásquez Jiménez, gender pronouns she, her, hers. I'm a community organizer and social movement builder. I have recently, since 2018, been using electoral politics as one of the multiple tools to further community organizing and movement building. I align deeply with our NDP's commitment of leaving no one behind. So when we talk about tackling climate change, we must talk about climate justice. We have to fundamentally, each and every one of us, understand that climate justice is about Indigenous rights and upholding the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. It's about two-spirited LGBTQIA+ rights. It's about racial justice, economic justice, disability justice, gender equity, migrant justice, and more. That all these issues are interconnected and are not separate. We need to elect representatives who are bold, who are transformative and visionaries, and who have the political will and track record of disrupting the status quo of incremental changes and have a moral compass to get this done. That means taking on big corporations, the biggest polluters, and making sure that they and the super wealthy pay their fair share, that those revenues be reinvested back into our communities for a cleaner planet. We can work towards having a guaranteed basic livable income, health care, including dental care, pharmacare, mental health services, prioritize housing, moving towards free tuition and profits in long-term care, a wealth tax, fair free transit, advance genuine reconciliation, and secure our future with a Green New Deal that leaves no one behind.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, so the first question. Under the Paris Agreement, the Government of Canada has promised to reduce its climate pollution by 30% by 2030. But Canada is not on track to meeting even this modest goal. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Canada could achieve its 2030 climate target by simply raising its price on carbon. Do you support raising Canada's carbon price? If yes, by how much? Andrea.
Thank you for that question. Our climate plan is one that is strong enough to meet Canada's obligations while simultaneously putting Indigenous sovereignty, Indigenous nations, communities, workers, and families at the heart of our work. It's time for an ambitious, comprehensive plan to take urgent action on climate change, create jobs, and strengthen our communities. The NDP has put forward a bold $15 billion climate change plan that confronts the climate crisis. And yes, absolutely support a carbon tax. We need to be making big polluters pay their fair share, while also being mindful that carbon pricing is also just one of the tools that we have in order to fight against climate change. Under our NDP Climate Action Plan, we adopt science-based greenhouse gas emission reduction targets for 2030 that are in with stabilizing global temperatures at 1.5 degrees Celsius and be accountable for meeting them. We'll keep ourselves accountable with regular audits, including a climate accountability office. We're going to be creating good jobs in all communities across the country, provide support for workers who are impacted by a shift to a zero carbon economy. That means a just transition for workers and community members. Le Gazan, also NDP member, introduced Bill C-232, the Climate Emergency Action Act, which ensures that we have a safe, clean, and healthy environment, is recognized as a human right. What is extremely disturbing, disappointing, but not surprising, that our Liberal candidate, who has been part of a status quo government currently as a candidate, is not showing up today.
Thank you, Andrea. Sasha.
So I guess right out of the gate, do I agree? Yes, of course I agree. I mean, a carbon tax has been conclusively shown to be one of the most effective, efficient, and cost-effective tools that we can create to actually affect the output of GHG, and directly hit our targets for the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, I mean, if we take a look, folks, all governments use this mechanism as a way of modifying behavior, whether it's incentivizing something via tax breaks, to get you to do something via, for example, the EV car tax break, or for example, in terms of smoking, for example, increasing prices via taxes, dissuade people from actually engaging in that act. It's not that hard. This is a real tool that folks use. I mean, unfortunately, the current government supported by the NDP, has regrettably chose to stick to the current target levels. They haven't adjusted anything. Nothing has been adjusted. And even beyond that, folks, if we take a look, protesters, if we Google right now, TMX pipeline protests, there are protesters being arrested as we speak for protesting this expansion of the pipeline. I mean, furthermore, if we want to talk about carbon pricing and the reduction of GHG, Prime Minister Trudeau was on TV with Doug Ford just recently opening up gold mines, natural resource extraction. Folks, under this leadership, we're not, with the help of the NDP, we're not getting anywhere. We're not going to meet these targets, and we're not going to achieve what we need to do. Folks, the world is...
Oh, you can finish your sentence, Sasha.
Well, thank you very much. Folks, the world's flooding and burning around us. The reality is it's time for a different act. As we've seen before, the current path that we've been on, since 1904, this riding has been red or blue. It's time to make a difference. It's time to act.
Thank you. So Sasha, would you like to, Andrea, would you like to respond to Sasha?
Yes. So one of the things that we were looking to do with the NDP, we ensured that we had wins and victories for people. And what that looks like during a pandemic crisis is ensuring we have paid sick days for workers, and ensuring also that instead of having the cuts that Justin Trudeau was already going to be making to supports for families and people to bring it down to $1,600, we ensured that it was $2,000 a month to ensure that once again communities and families are central. Also, averting election during a pandemic, right? It is increasingly responsible and actually is a commitment to voter suppression when we have elections happening within a landscape of pandemic. I completely, I do agree with the candidate in regards to we have a liberal status quo government who is insufficient, and we need bold elected officials that are ready to fight for all of us.
Thank you. And Sasha, would you like to respond?
I guess just quickly, I hear 100% what you're saying, Andrea. I agree with you 100%. We definitely need to do things to support the folks during this time of COVID, but I am one of those folks. I had to take a day off of work just to be at this meeting. I don't get days off otherwise. These things directly affect me. I've seen friends lose their jobs as a result of COVID. The street is closing up. The second cup around the corner is shutting down. We need bold behaviors, and the NDP hasn't done anything to show that they're willing to take a step forward. All they've done is shown that they're willing to maintain the status quo by siding with the Liberals, unfortunately.
Okay, let's move on to the second question. The transportation sector is Canada's second largest source of greenhouse gas pollution. What should the Government of Canada do to support transit, electric vehicles, and smart cities to lower transportation-related emissions? Sasha.
Well, folks, this riding is actually kind of particular. As everybody who lives in this riding knows, that we're incredibly transit-oriented, not even in terms of public transportation and personal transportation, but we have a large industrial component here. So a lot of folks own cars, a lot of folks take the bus, and there is a high transport, characteristic to all of this. What we can do, and we have a goal line running through all of this, not to mention. So there's a multi-pronged approach that we really have to take. And the first and easiest fix to do is cut down on congestion. At one point, Mayor Tory was running a retiming the city lights campaign. I think that was a great pilot project. Unfortunately, it stopped. But if we were to just time lights a little better, that would stop the idling, and we'd be able to reduce greenhouse gases that way. Next, public transportation. I live on Bathurst. I see buses from the TTC running up and down, marked with the big fancy hybrid signs. You know what? I only see the actual green, all-electric green buses that were touted by the TTC not too long ago. If we were able to push and pressure and fund the TTC to do a little bit more of that onboarding of the green buses, I think that would be fantastic. There would be a reduction in GHG there. Not only that, but a reduction in cost prices for fuel. Now, if we take a look at large truck transport, there's tons of companies out there that are working hard to provide an all-electric answer for these large transport trucks that get our goods from here to there. It's not complicated, folks. This is very easy. Lastly, we have to electrify the GO. The GO is something that, once again, is a large people mover. We need to get these diesel-emitting GHG trains off of the tracks. but it goes
Time's
well.
up.
Fair enough.
Thank you. Thank you, Sasha. And Andrea.
Yes, thank you for that question. These compelling alternatives, once again, are possible. What we need is political will. And once again, when centering people, when centering communities, especially in New York Center, moving towards climate justice and understanding people's struggles to get around in the city. Like sometimes you're waiting for a bus for over an hour. And so the reality is that what is absolutely necessary are smart cities to ensure that folks are able to work, live, play, shop, and study in walking distances even. And a fundamental part of a smart city is that I'm proud as an NDP member and NDP candidate is push for fair, free public transit that is accessible and more frequent. We can make public transit cleaner, more convenient, and more affordable, even free. This is a reality, and this will support our greener future, as well as ensure to support those who are most negatively impacted. We see the criminalization of poverty, where people get over $400 of tickets when they're unable to pay for a fare. We see the policing, special constables. What we need is police-free transit as well, right? And so when we're also talking about, getting more zero-emission vehicles on the road for those who do have the privilege to have ownership or lease a vehicle, but also electrifying our transit fleets by 2030, making it easier to buy and charge a zero-emission vehicle no matter where you go. It's necessary to partner up with our labor partners to ensure growth in jobs and made in Canada products. And the plan also includes major investments in other low carbon transportation like rail and ferries.
Thank you. Okay, with Sasha, would you like to respond to Andrea? Oh, you're muted.
Sure. I agree 100%. Free public transportation is 100% a necessary thing. We definitely need to go down that road if we're trying to move away from the idea of consuming vehicles. Now, one of the things that I want to kind of touch on is the fact that providing incentives for EVs is only half the battle. I live in an apartment. If I were to purchase an EV, how am I supposed to charge it? If I have to go out somewhere, there's no gas stations around here that actually have charging stations. If we want to take a look at even a layer deeper, the mechanics that service these diesel vehicles, that service these gasoline vehicles, need to provide them an opportunity to service EVs, right? Right now, as we can see, Tesla is very protective of their technologies and their people working on them. We need to be able to provide everybody this opportunity to get into an EV, to get onto public transportation, and to lower these GHGs.
And Andrea?
Yeah, definitely agree that we need for it to be easier to buy and a zero emissions vehicle, and also have the charging stations across the country. And it also has to do with urban equity planning. When our inner cities, including New York Center, really has no spaces really for a walk, and thankfully we do have areas of green spaces and parks, but we need to do better, and we can. And fair, free transit is part of that plan, moving towards a greener future.
Very good. Okay. Next question. Homes and buildings are Canada's third largest source of climate pollution. Most are heated by fracked gas from Western Canada and the US. What should the government of Canada do to reduce fossil energy heating in our homes and buildings? Andrea.
Well, first off, I want to say I personally absolutely do not support fracking. And within the NDP caucus and as a representative of York Center, I would be advocating for that, to not support fracking. And so what's important as well when centering people within a just transition and understanding people's struggles towards a green economy is that people shouldn't have to be burdened with the additional expenses when transitioning to energy efficient, even energy producing within our transition to green energy. So it's extremely important to us and the NDP to make all new buildings in Canada net zero ready by 2030. And of course, complete energy efficiency retrofits on all existing housing stock in Canada by 2050. And we know that this is a cost mechanism. Folks can be saving $900 or more per year on home energy costs with energy efficient upgrades and incentives. And also returns on our investment will also be related to home insulation, caulking, door window retrofits. And these also have other great ripple effects in our wider communities with made in Canada opportunities to once again build those good paying jobs. And these are local jobs once again. And with a recent study, even by the ICF International, which found that deeper efficiency efforts between now and 2030, when just even looking at this province, it saves consumers 85 billion natural gas costs over a lifetime. So imagine that in our country, and eliminating fossil fuel subsidies, absolutely.
Thank you, Andrea. Sasha.
Okay, so unfortunately, this is where the Green Party kind of diverges and splits off from the rest of the parties in the field. As much as I appreciate Ms. Vásquez Jiménez there saying that she'll actively speak out towards her caucus for the shutdown of fracking, the reality is the NDP in and of itself still supports fracking, which is fully regrettable. In reality, fracking needs to stop, full stop. Not only are we destroying the water table by fracking, and we're polluting folks who live in those areas, we're lighting their water on fire as well, but we are directly contributing GHG gases back into the environment while burning these gases. So it's not like this big mysterious thing. It's like not only are we destroying the water table, but we're also putting more GHG into the actual air. On top of that, there's earthquakes that are associated with this. There's big, massive infringements on Indigenous sovereignty and Indigenous territories. We're destroying their way of life, destroying their water centers. Folks, there is an organization, an accreditation program called LEED, which literally makes requires buildings to have a bit more of a green policy. Downsview Park right now is going through a development to build housing. Why can't we call for a more green plan? How come we can't call for geothermal heating? How come we can't call for more solar panels on top of roofs? Folks, it's doable. We just need to have the political will. We, as the people, need to tell our elected officials that this is what we demand. It's not a request anymore.
Thank you. Time's up. Great. Andrea, would you like to respond? Yeah.
Yes, and I think what's really important is that everybody understands that our status quo government of Liberals once again, have been continuing to give more than $1 billion a year in subsidies to fossil fuel companies. And I do echo the Green candidate in regards to, the pipelines that are being built, right? The Liberals stating in 2019, June of 2019, they declare a national climate emergency, yet the next day invest $4.5 billion into pipelines, right? And then we also see what's wetting, the solidarity marches. People want to ensure that we are upholding the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. And, within there, it means not forcibly removing Indigenous peoples from their land. It's unceded territories. Liberal governments must respect Indigenous laws and treaties.
Thank you, Sasha.
Yeah, just quickly, you know what? I sincerely appreciate Andrea here and what she's saying, because it's right. But for the same token, unfortunately, as much as you kind of want to, as much as the NDP wants to shift the focus and be like, this is a status quo liberal government, the only folks that voted for the throne speech were the NDP. So I appreciate what she's saying, but they are a part of this status quo government as well, and directly culpable in their behaviors.
Okay. Next question. Yesterday, the Government of Canada gave terrestrial energy $20 million to subsidize the development of a small modular nuclear reactor. Do you believe that the Government of Canada should subsidize nuclear power? And would you support the installation of a small modular nuclear reactor in York Centre? Sasha.
Okay. So let me set, folks, if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I'd love to set the table for you for a little bit. So first, the idea of SMRs have been on the Liberal docket since 2018. And I have a quote right here from Hansard. from Seamus O'Regan, who is actually the Natural Resources Minister. Mr. Speaker, in November 2018, the Government of Canada welcomed the release of a call to action, a Canadian roadmap for small modular reactors. The report was a culmination of a 10-month pan-Canadian stakeholder-led engagement initiative convened by Natural Resources Canada. It brought together provincial territorial governments, utilities, industries, civil societies, Indigenous communities, and interested stakeholders to explore the opportunity of Canada's emerging technology. Now, moving forward, in 2019, we had Doug Ford announce alongside Blaine Higgs of New Brunswick and Scott Moe of Saskatchewan their interprovincial plan for SMRs. And it's been highlighted in the Ontario legislature that the current Minister of Energy not only subscribes to a climate denial website, and then, but furthermore, he goes on, and when asked about GHG by the GPO leader, Mike Schreiner, the Environment Minister had just last month, working with the Minister of Energy, I approved the environmental approval so that it can move forward as a way of creating the Wattawa Power Corridor in the north, which is going to remove Indigenous communities off diesel energy production and give them clean production for clean sources. Now,
Sasha,
I don't know about
use your time.
There?
Can you just wrap up? I know you were getting to something.
Absolutely. Folks, it's insane to think that nuclear is any kind of way forward. If we take a look at Chalk River, if we take a look at 3 Mile Island, if we take a look at what happened in Fukushima Prefecture, it's an impossibility. It's an impossibility. There is no clean way forward to make this happen.
Okay, thanks, Sasha. Yeah. Andrea, it's over to you.
Yeah, you know, even looking at the Liberals and Justin Trudeau, you know, they think that what Canadians need right now is money going to nuclear energy research rather than everyday people and supporting them. You know, nuclear has been cost prohibitive and costs continuously rise. Nuclear energy also bankrupted Hydro Ontario, and that's why we have this patchwork of privatized energy right now. I absolutely do not support this. No small modular reactors anywhere in York Centre, Toronto, or across the country. Once again, when we ensure that we have a Green New Deal plan that leaves no one behind and centers the well-being of communities, and especially ensures that those most negatively impacted are supported, that also ensures that we are conscious of environmental racism and the impact it has on people's health and well-being. So environmental crises, climate crises are not what folks imagine the pandemic also to be a great equalizer, when in fact it disproportionately impacts primarily Black, Indigenous, and racialized peoples. And also with nuclear, with these nuclear spaces, they tend to be within lower socioeconomic areas, in overexploited spaces, and in populous areas. You know, we can just look at the Pickering nuclear facility in regards to our distance to that facility. You know, we are within the area for high impacts, and it's also the oldest. I know, looking at some of the research your organization have put out, you know, the oldest nuclear generating station in the province. It's running on 1960s and 1970s technology. And so this actually shows the devastating impact it has on people. We need to start placing people over profit.
Thank you. Sasha, would you like to respond?
Sure, I'll respond and also kind of finish a few more points. First off, once again, you folks supported the speech from the throne. As I highlighted in 2018, the Trudeau government already had the SMR on the agenda, so let's call a spade here. I mean, beyond that, this is a matter of environmental justice. Why are we even why is the federal government or the provincial government even fathoming using the Indigenous populations up north as a test ground for these SMRs? All we have to do is look at the south side of Chicago with the petroleum coke problem and the dust that spreads into the low-income neighborhoods and causes higher rates of cancer and higher rates of illness, to take a look that this is unacceptable by any measure. There's no logical way that anybody can say that this is a good idea. And just to touch on what Andrea said, there's a 30-kilometer exclusion zone for Pickering, and we all got that terrifying warning on our phones not too long ago about the potential nuclear incident at Pickering. Imagine if that was in York Centre. That goes all the way down to the lakeshore and all the way past York region. It's an impossibility, folks.
Thank you, Sasha. Andrea.
Yeah, you know, I do want to remind folks that the NDP has by far been extremely powerful in getting wins and victories for people. And that is seen even within minority governments. You know, historically, we were able to push for Medicare, for public health for folks. And most recently, within this, we were able to push the Liberal government to ensure additional supports. Once again, paid sick days for workers. Such many of us don't have any paid sick days, and in many instances have to, you know, look at ways of surviving when we don't actually have those. This is about life and death situations, and the NDP chose to fight and win victories for people, such as paid sick days and ensuring $2,000 a month supports for people.
Can I just touch on that for 1 second? I just want to say that I agree, but I am one of those people with no paid sick days, first off. Second of all, at the end of the day, this is, you know what, I think I'm just gonna leave it there. I am one of those folks with no paid sick days. This needs to change. I wouldn't be sitting here if the NDP and the Liberals were able to provide a real answer for folks.
Okay, you two, let's move on. The government of Ontario is planning to increase the climate pollution from gas-fired power plants by more than 300% by 2025. What should the government of Canada do to promote the faster development of wind and solar energy in Ontario? Andrea.
I think once again, it really comes to making the choices, making the decisions to reallocate funds, to reinvest funds, to ensure that polluters, big corporations, and the super wealthy are paying their fair share. And that is the only way that we'll be able to ensure that we move towards a greener planet. We have to tackle offshore tax havens. We have to tackle tax evasion. We have to tackle housing speculators and ensure that we are reinvesting into these alternatives.
Thank you. And Sasha?
Well, folks, he wants to increase pollution by 300%. I mean, right out of the gate, folks, let's not forget that Premier Ford spent $231 million of our tax dollars destroying the wind farm projects at White Pine and other renewable projects. And we also had the NDP support a throne speech that had made no mention of renewables all on its own. Now, beyond that, I mean, folks, look around us. Look at what happened in the heart of the COVID situation. We saw the air clean up. Traffic stopped, you know, traffic cut to a zero. Transportation cut to a zero. The air started to clean. Mumbai was able to see their air. LA was able to see around. This isn't a big shocking thing what we're talking about here. This isn't like we saw the proof in the pudding. Right now we're standing at the precipice, folks. We're standing at the cliff edge. And the idea is either we can go back, we can turn around and head back to where we were, or we can move forward and take the leap of faith. We can dive right into a net push alongside the net zero economy for a green future, a green economy. In the next few years, folks, the government's going to be spending millions by this COVID event. We need to start thinking for the future. Obviously, like I said, I'm so bright, like analogy, we have to skate to where the puck's going to, and not to where not to where it is. And the Greens are skating to where the puck's going. Everybody else is just catching up.
Thank you. Andrea, would you like to comment?
Yeah, so with the NDP, we tactfully were able to avert national elections during a pandemic where, you know, the Liberals have not expanded the Canada Elections Act. I have people, when I'm calling, you know, people from our community in York Center, people who are in quarantine, who have COVID, they don't know how they're going to be able to even vote by mail, because even voting by mail, you have to show some type of presence to identify who you are. So I think what this is about is the NDP averted a national election, meanwhile simultaneously supporting and getting wins and victories for people.
And Sasha?
You know what? Has there been a win in the sense of extending the guaranteed livable income or what it looks like for now? Yes, I agree with you. But in terms of what we're talking about right now, which is the 300% increase out of Ontario, once again, there's been no mention of any kind of renewables in the throne speech, and the NDP has been there to prop them up. So unfortunately, once again, folks, stop being, every major party is willing to sell you on a lie and spend $50 million to do it, and no party is willing to say the truth and lose a voter and $1 to do it. Folks, it's time to vote differently.
Okay, I just want to remind the viewers that at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can, there's a Q&A box and you can ask your questions. We're going to get to a couple of questions. I just have one more question here. What should Canada do to encourage more carbon capture and storage by our forests, wetlands, and farmlands? Sasha.
Well, folks, once again, we're at a time where funding is here. The government's willing to spend money. We just have to install the folks that have the political will to take that money and build back better and greener. I mean, there's the obvious things, which is like forest, rebuilding our forests, reclamation of our wetlands. We can spend money on direct air capture plants to scrub the CO2 out of the air. We can encourage support, for farmers to switch to organic and regenerative farming practices. We can do things like set positive soil standards, so that way more carbon is captured by the soil. Folks, if we even take a look at just like our own backyards, the idea of a lawn that doesn't do anything for you comes out of the 15th century. It was a wealth. I didn't have to do anything with my land, so I can plant a lawn. I didn't have to grow food. I could plant a lawn, and that was the status of wealth. We're not there anymore. We can put back these organic, growing fields so that we can feed ourselves. We can bring back the wildflowers and the wild grass so that bees can continue to thrive. Like, it's not, we don't need to hold on to these archaic systems anymore, folks. We can encourage more community gardens. We can plant wild gardens. We can feed homeless folks with fruit trees on the streets. Folks, the possibilities are endless. We just have to have folks in government that are willing to take a look at the other alternatives and have the political.
Thank you, Sasha. Andrea. Thank you. The world's biodiversity, plants, animals, nature has been declining at alarming rates because of climate change and the destruction of natural habitats. And 100%, we need to act now to preserve and begin restoring our natural habitats and wildlife before it is too late. And this won't happen without upholding Indigenous rights and self-determination, Indigenous sovereignty. We need to also support and co-create and have them have Indigenous-led managed protected areas to make sure that species and tree recovery efforts uphold Indigenous rights and embrace traditional knowledge to increase also biodiversity. One of the most important things we can also be doing is, of course, protecting more land, including waters and oceans, so that natural habits and wildlife begin to heal. And many of us have seen empty promises from Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, right? They had, scooped up an NDP proposition around building 1 billion trees, and then since then has done nothing, right? We're committed to protecting at least 30% of our land, freshwaters and oceans by 2030, backed by funding and enforcement. We'll protect biodiversity by using all federal tools under the Species at Risk Act and ensure implementation of recovery strategies. And there's also other proactive measures we can take, working with other levels of government to develop a system of urban national park to support conservation, preserve our natural heritage, developing a national approach to tree planting, using responsible reforestation to help lower our carbon footprint, expand the marine protected areas to protect ocean biodiversity, and fight back against invasive species as well.
Thank you. Sasha, would you like to respond?
So, I mean, thank you, Andrea, for bringing up the 2 billion trees planted promise, because once again, shows to Goya that although the NDP has their heart in the right place, they've supported a government that's interested in maintaining the status quo. Lots of pleasant words, lots of money spent on nice campaigns, but unfortunately no real action is being done. I mean, take a look at what's happening up north, folks. The development of the fossil fuel sector is directly stripping Indigenous folks of their land, of their hunting lands, of the fish and food that they used to hunt these are table. That's why so many communities up north still don't have clean drinking water. Another thing that was a target on the really came of it, and unfortunately the NDP has supported it. Folks, I think you know where the decision is to be made.
Thank you. And Andrea.
Yeah, definitely. So with the NDP, we understand that climate justice is not separate from social justice, economic justice, and so forth. And we understand that people during this pandemic, many of these issues have been deepened and have been amplified, right? Many of these issues are not new issues. And so knowing that climate justice is about social justice, it's about centering communities, it's about centering people, it is fundamental that we were able to push for victories and wins for people. And paid sick leave and $2,000 a month, that meant also for people's survival just to get past another day. And so I am proud that the NDP, we were able to make those victories for people and continue to fight.
Great, you two. Okay, let's take some questions from the viewing audience. Brad?
Thanks, Angela. Just a note, a small correction. The election date is actually October the 26th, and advanced polling is from October the 16th to the 19th. So we want to make sure everybody gets out there and makes their vote count. So our first question comes from a EV driver who is interested in knowing whether your parties will support free EV charging and what you will do to expand the EV charging network, I assume particularly in York Center. And Andrea gets the first opportunity to respond.
Thank you. Yeah, so in regards to looking at incentives and once again, understanding that the burden should not be on people, the burden should be on the corporations having to pay their fair share to ensure that we're able to create the condition for folks to live and thrive. And within a greener space, that also means to have free charging stations. As I had seen within the question, they were referring in regards to my colleague in Toronto Center. And we know that the NDP has been, working alongside folks to see and reimagine what are ways that we can actually, work together to ensure national vehicle free charging stations. And one of those ideas was really looking at, working alongside Canada Postal Offices and spaces. But that is also just one of the multiple ideas. But what is needed is very much so free charging stations to once again incentivize folks and not burden people with additional expenses.
Thank you, Sasha.
Well, folks, as I said before, in terms of the transportation question, I mean, it all starts with your home. I live in an apartment. How am I supposed to charge an EV? Of course, we need to have free EV charging. We need to incentivize gas stations. Owners of gas stations need to have an EV charging component. I appreciate the NDP's idea of using the post office, but the reality of the situation is that post offices are so far and few in between that to think that somebody is going to logically take their car there and charge it is actually absurd, in my opinion. I don't see it being a viable idea. We need to actually do more, whether it's incentivizing the landlords of large apartment complexes to build in EV chargers, whether it's moving forward, every new apartment has to have an EV charging area. There's many tools in this toolbox that we can use. Incentives to landlords, we can incentivize, we can tax break all of these vehicles. There's a dozen toolboxes, folks. Once again, you can either stick with the old ways or you can get on the new train. It's up to you.
Great. Do either of you want to rebut, or should we just go to the next question?
Just one quick thing. That example was just one of many multiple ones that have to be done in co-creation and partnership, moving towards a greener economy.
Sasha, anything? Okay. Brad?
That's good.
Okay, so we've heard a lot of great ideas today, from buying electric vehicles to retrofitting your home. But there's a lot of seniors in York Center who are on fixed incomes and don't necessarily have the means to adopt these solutions. So how will you help seniors in your riding to live greener lives.
And that would go to Andrea, please. No, sorry, Sasha.
Well, my parents are seniors. My father's in a wheel, and my mother is, his caretaker. So the reality is, how do we do that? We have to provide greener transportation. We have to green our Wheel-Trans system. We have to provide closer shopping centers. There's a million and one tools that we can use. Once again, nothing is off the table as long as you're willing to have the political will to see it through. Everything is possible.
Andrea?
And I see within their question, they're also speaking to, which are ways to improve seniors' lives, right? And so with the NDP, we do have, and motion 46 by Legazan, MP of Winnipeg Center, is pushing for a guaranteed basic livable income, not the one that conservatives and liberals are pushing for, which is a neoliberalized universal basic income. There's a large difference. So the guaranteed basic livable income would be in addition to supporting and creation of additional government programs. We also are going to be leading a national senior strategy that will work with provinces, territories, and Indigenous governments to make seniors healthcare a priority, reduce isolation, tackle seniors poverty. We have, pushing for head-to-toe healthcare. A lot of folks, whether it be seniors, youth, along the spectrum, including myself, we have to pay for our own medications. Sometimes we're going half on how much medication we're actually taking because even many seniors can't afford that. We're also ensuring, mental health services. We're ensuring, different forms of reimagining housing, such as intergenerational housing to reduce isolation, a funded national dementia strategy, having, transit. And we're also ensuring that, families that need access to quality home and long-term care, that it is not these profit care homes. We need to take profit out of long-term care homes. We have seen that has led to criminal negligence of the Liberals that has been causing death of seniors.
Thank you, Sasha.
So just to follow up, so as I said before, my parents are seniors, and they do live at or below the poverty line, to be gentle about it. And the reality is that includes access to food security, right? Why is it easier for somebody to go to McDonald's and spend $3 on a hamburger than it is to the apples, healthy carrots? This is what seniors, folks, I encourage you to look at the platforms between the NDP and the Green. Again, all of these items that the NDP is discussing are things that have been listed on the Green platform. These are our platform. Everybody is catching up to where we have been this whole time. So moving forward, how can we help the seniors? Agree, 100%, guaranteed livable income, food, access to clean, healthy food, access to, like you said, shared living accommodations, better social supports. We need better transportation. We need better, the list can go on how hard done by our seniors are in terms of this society. We need to move forward, folks.
Sasha, Andrea, did you have a final comment?
Yeah, just that, in regards to looking at seniors and the intersectionality of lived experiences, we also, looking to remove barriers for people with disabilities. As a start, New Democrats will uphold the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and strengthen the Accessibility Act to cover all federal agencies equally, and also with the power to make and enforce accessibility standards in a timely manner. We see that, once again, accessibility continues through and through being an issue for seniors and other peoples.
Thank you, Brad. We have another question from the audience.
One more, which is that a couple of the audience members would like to know about your local approach. And, what specifically you would be doing within York Centre, perhaps around the Downsview redevelopment, and specifically if there is an organization or institution in York Centre that you would be eager to work with on issues like a just transition.
Andrea.
Yeah, definitely. So even from a couple of years ago, we had spoken with some senior groups in regards to their concerns around Downsview Park, right? And one of their concerns was that if there were to be some form of development, that what we would see is gentrification. And what we would see is people being pushed out of their homes, out of their spaces. And one of the things that they were advocating for is, ensuring that we have deeply affordable housing. Because one of the issues with York Center, and this happens in many spaces across Toronto and the country, is that folks define affordable housing, but it's not actually affordable, right? Most people cannot afford affordable housing. So one of the things, it's working with, these grassroots organizations, and ensuring that there is also a political lens that is looking at equity. Because in many instances, one may have the complexities of when I've spoken with groups that one may have particular ideas over another, and how do you negotiate that? Well, it's not in regards to about negotiating per se, but it's about fundamentally what is our politics that is guiding this. And if we're looking to leave no one behind, what we are to ensure is that we ensure those who are most negatively impacted are supported, and what is necessary for some inevitably is good for all.
Oh, it was, sorry, I cut you off early. It was my fault. Were you finished, Andrea? I'm really sorry. You can come back.
Yeah, I'll come
back to it. Sorry about that, Sasha.
So what are we doing about housing, Downsview, and working with organizations for a just transition? So first off, like I said from the outset, folks, I'm just like you. I'm your average person. I'm not tied to any large special interest groups. I have no backers. I'm willing to work with anybody and everybody who has a proven track record of actually helping people. Because once again, we all know that it's easy for NPOs to masquerade themselves as an altruistic entity, much like the Liberal government. But as we can see, that action doesn't actually follow words. So I'm willing to reach out and work with anybody, and have anybody reach out and work with me to achieve an objective. Now, in terms of housing, let's take a look what's going on. I mean, the Trudeau government just not too long ago announced for downtown Toronto, almost $1 billion for quote unquote affordable housing. There's only about 150 units that are rent geared to income, and then everything else is borderline market value, right? And if we can take a look at anything that's going on in terms of the market, it's even around here, it's $1,500, $1,800, $2,000. It's not livable. And in terms of Downsview, it's the best opportunity we have of providing real low income housing for folks who need it. It's not livable in this city anymore. 100% vacation are pushing folks out, myself included. I've spent every day at work worrying about my hours so that I can pay my rent because of how absurd the price is here. We need to change.
Thank you. And again, Andrea, sorry I cut you off early. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm okay. Thank you, Angela.
No comment? Okay. Very good, you two. I guess that's it for our debate. I want to thank you both. Those were fantastic ideas from both of you. Thank you both for sharing your time with us and for you taking the day off, Sasha. I'd like to thank you both for your commitment to climate leadership. We wish you all in your race to represent York Center. Thank you so much.
Thank you very kindly, folks. Thank you very kindly.
And for the benefit of the Zoom and Facebook registrants, I'll send you all YouTube and Facebook links to share with your friends. And to close, let's enjoy this uplifting 2-minute song for the climate.